Good morning. The regular Board of County Commissioners meeting of Tuesday, January 8, 2013 will now come to order. Will be led by an invocation by Freddie Wolfwalk from the Gifford Youth Activity Center, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Wesley Davis, Vice Chairman. Please rise.
Let us pray. Father, here we are once again, coming before your throne of grace, seeking and asking for your divine guidance. We come as empty pitchers before a full fountain, with the assurance that our every need shall and will be met. We also ask, Father, that you continue to pour out your guidance, your wisdom, knowledge, and compassion, and most of all, your understanding to our elected officials, appointed officials, staff, and the like. You have brought us through 2012, and we are confident that you will bring and bless us in 2013. We lift you up this morning. We give you the honor, the praise, and the glory. In the mighty name of Jesus Christ we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Well, we have a very exciting agenda today. We'll start it off with some great excitement. We have 5 constitutional officers that will have their oath administered. That'll be done by the Honorable Judge David C. Morgan. Your Honor, would you please come on up and prepare us for the administration of the oath? And I'd like to at this time call Carol Jean Jordan, tax collector.
Are you ready to take the oath? Please raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Carol Jean Jordan, do solemnly swear
I, Carol Jean Jordan, do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution and government of the United States and of the state of Florida,
the Constitution and government of the United States and of the state of Florida,
that I am duly qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state,
that I am duly qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state,
and that I will well and faithfully perform the duties of tax collector,
and that I will well and faithfully perform the duties of tax collector,
of which I am now about to enter.
of which I am now about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
At the end of all of the oaths, we'll call all the constitutionals up and all their invited guests and take a group photo as was requested. Thank you. At this point, we'd like to call Sheriff Darrell Law to the podium. That was a good choice, Sheriff.
Yeah, it's clear the sheriff married up.
Good morning. Are you ready to take the oath?
I'm ready.
Please raise your right hand, sir. I, Darrell Lord, do solemnly swear
I, Darrell Lord, do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution and government of the United States and of the state of Florida,
the Constitution of the government of the United States and the state of Florida,
that I am duly qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state,
and I am duly qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state,
and that I will well and faithfully perform the duties of sheriff,
and that I will well and faithfully perform the duties of sheriff,
of which I am now about to enter.
of which I am now about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
I'd like to call David C. Nolte, property appraiser, to the podium. Don't say it. Don't say it.
Your turn, Commissioner. Dave, I'm just glad you dressed up for the occasion.
I like my Hawaiian shirt at home because Gary's not here.
I know.
I was in high school the first time he took this oath. So. You ready to take the oath? Yes, sir. Please raise your right hand. I, David Nolte, do solemnly swear
I, David Nolte, do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution and government of the United States and of the state of Florida,
the Constitution and government of the United States and of the state of Florida.
that I am duly qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state,
That I am duly qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state.
and that I will well and faithfully perform the duties of property appraiser,
And I will well and faithfully serve the duties of property appraiser,
of which I am now about to enter.
of which I am now about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, David.
At this time, I'd like to call Jeff Smith, the clerk of the Circuit Court and Controller, to the podium.
Morning.
Another wise choice, Jeff.
Jeff, are you ready to take the oath?
Yes.
Please raise your right hand, sir. I, Jeff Smith, do solemnly swear
I, Jeff Smith, do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution and government of the United States and of the state of Florida,
the Constitution and government of the United States and the state of Florida,
that I am duly qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state,
that I am duly qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state,
and that I will well and faithfully perform the duties of clerk of circuit court,
and that I will well and faithfully perform the duties of clerk of the circuit court,
of which I am now about to enter.
of which I'm now about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, brother.
At this time, I'd like to call Leslie Swan, Supervisor of Elections, to the podium. And of course, another wise choice.
Morning again. Leslie, you ready to take the... You are ready, I see. Please repeat after me. I, Leslie Swan, do solemnly swear
I, Leslie Swan, do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution and government of the United States and of the state of Florida,
the Constitution and the government of the United States and the state of Florida,
that I am duly qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state,
that I am duly qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state,
and that I will well and faithfully perform the duties of supervisor of elections,
and that I will well and faithfully perform the duties of supervisor of elections,
of which I am now about to enter.
of which I am now about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Your Honor has other duties to perform at this point, so there was a request to take a group photo. If we can ask all of the constitutional officers that have now been sworn in and taken their oath to come up to the front of the dais so we can take a group photo.
They want us standing behind them, or?
Did they want, I don't know, they probably want a better picture without, you want one up here?
We'll move out of the way.
Probably be nice if they can put it with their families.
Okay. These cans are gonna fucking up on. We gotta have the ladies in the middle.
Yeah, we should. We should do it both ways. I thought they were going to stay there.
However you want to do it. It's your day.
We'll do one of each, if you don't mind.
I don't think so.
Another job, you get more guys out for the paper.
I'm not gonna look at it.
Commissioners, spouses?
Nice job.
Their choice.
How we doing? The chair's fine. No. All right.
If you want to pull that up.
No, no.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. Wait a minute. All right, I'll just stand.
Yeah.
You sure about that?
Here, go ahead.
Which one is you?
This looks like the big boy here.
Oh, that really thins out the crowd.
Give him time.
For our viewing members, the chambers are emptying out as we speak. The constitutional offices are fast and steady to go to work. We're not on? Thank you. What's that? Today's the first day. Is it? Today's the first day. You'll see each announcement.
Oh, like it follows the agenda?
Yeah, follows the agenda.
Nice.
Brand new. And then you're going to put your names up there.
Really?
Yeah. Well, now that all the constitutional officers are out of the room for the most part, well, that's your choice, but we still have some agenda to go through. With that, gentlemen, any additions, deletions to the agenda? Any emergency items?
Move approval as presented.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
There was a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Solari, and motion carried unanimously. Next will be proclamations and presentations. Presentation on the Lagoon Greenway by Ken Grudens, Executive Director for the Indian River Land Trust. Welcome, Mr. Grudens.
Thank you. Yes, Ken Grudens, Executive Director of the Indian River Land Trust and resident of Sebastian. And here I thought all these people were actually here for my presentation.
They were.
They're watching.
It's my pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about the Lagoon Greenway today and the status of this project, very successful partnership project between the county and the Land Trust. And I have a slideshow, which I was hoping would just pop up on the screen magically. I don't know if anybody has an opportunity to do that.
Ken will have.
Is Bob Keating in the room that can
All
help with a PowerPoint?
Look at that. Thank you. Like I said, this project has been going on for a number of years, but it's been a very successful project as a result of a public-private partnership. Simply put, this project is a 3-mile trail system for hiking and biking through oak forests, over wetlands, and along the Indian River Lagoon. The entrance is located at the intersection of Indian River Boulevard and 8th Street, but it extends back to the lagoon in north and south over 187 acres. What's interesting about this project is that it really started as 4 separate ownerships. Going from north to south, you see in yellow the Florida Inland Navigation District property. Below that, Indian River County, the Flynn Tract purchased in the 1990s with bond funding. Below that, the River Park Place property, which is a wonderful 55 and over community nestled over there off of the boulevard. And lastly, in green, 66 acres acquired by the Land Trust in the 1990s as part of the McKee Botanical Garden project it protected then. And what it has come together to be is this Greenway Trail system through oak forests, over wetlands and boardwalks, around a mangrove forest and out to the lagoon with 3 miles of trails. The second phase will be a mangrove boardwalk that goes through the mangrove forest and out to an observation deck over the lagoon. Again, I cannot emphasize that this project never would have gotten done without the partnership of the county and the Land Trust and others, which I'll talk about in a minute. But it was essential because the county was able to secure funding and the permits and oversee the development of contracts and assist now in maintaining these trails. The Land Trust worked closely with the county to provide promotion for the project, to assist with funding for grants and private funds. We've coordinated the tracking of the project, and we now work with a core group of volunteers to maintain that property on a regular basis. 2 other funding partners I think are very worth mentioning, and they are the Florida Inland Navigation District and the Florida Office of Greenways and Trails, which, as you see, has helped with both Phase 1 and 2, FIND has, and the second phase, there's funding available from the Office of Greenways and Trails Recreational Trails Program. This is in addition to money that the County Commission has appropriated for this project over the past years through unanimous votes of all of you, and also with private funds from the Land Trust. The goals were simple for this project: provide pathways for recreational opportunities, walking, jogging, bicycling, conserve the natural resources and enhance those resources on the lagoon, and establish educational facilities and programs, which we're talking about for potential Phase 3 funding from the Florida Navigation District. And it's working. This shot was taken on the Lagoon Greenway a few weeks ago. People are coming out in droves, using that wonderful parking area. Here you see a shot of the trailhead parking and the trailhead itself with the information kiosk and the picnic table. We have maps that we have at the kiosk that the Land Trust has produced and printed. As I mentioned, it's 3 miles of trails and boardwalks over some wetlands. There's a small picnic area and a quiet part of the trail, a little bit back from the boulevard. And now we have 2 benches on the trail donated by Land Trust members Bill and Laura Buck. These were just put in last week. Another more silent partner has been the Indian River Mosquito Control District. They've been instrumental because they manage that impoundment loop trail for mosquito control, but they also have been helpful recently, just about a week and a half ago, improving the impoundment trail to take some of the wet areas out. That was a partnership between the Land Trust, the county, and mosquito control. Here you see a view of the lagoon from the impoundment, right where the bench is. We've also had a lot of volunteers involved in this project. In the months leading up to opening this project in November, we had Sebastian Troop 599 come out and install all the posts and signs. The signs were fabricated by the county through the road and bridge, and the scouts were able to put these posts in after the Land Trust purchased those posts. We also had a church group out there the same day cleaning one of the mini adventure trail segments of the project and picking up trash. Both these groups came courtesy of United Way through their Day of Caring back in September. We now have a core group of volunteers right in River Park Place. The River Park Place community has become the eyes and ears of this project. They're there, they live there, they watch this project, they're out there every day, walking the trails, monitoring, providing reports to the Land Trust. You see one resident here out trimming vegetation and picking up garbage. And we even have a shot here of the county's very own Roland DeBlois working on one of our Saturday work crews with his son Forrest. They found a tire in there somewhere. And so I'm really pleased to announce that we're going to be celebrating the hard work that's gone into this effort to open this greenway with a ribbon cutting this Friday. I know you've all been invited, and I hope you can all be there to celebrate this momentous occasion of this wonderful partnership project. And I also will hand out, that's all from my slideshow I hand out. I don't know if you had a chance to have a copy of these.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions at all?
Mr. Chairman? Yes. Ken, it's a fantastic project. Congratulations. I know you've put a lot of hard work into this. I guess it was 2 Sundays ago, my wife and I wanted to go out and walk the trail. And about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we drove out there, and we couldn't find a parking spot in the parking area. It was full. Everybody was taking advantage of it. So we ran a few errands, came back about a half hour later, and we were able to get one parking spot to get out there and walk the trail. So it's getting good use. I think the word's spreading, and it's a great trail. One question I have, I noticed, particularly on the impoundment side, somebody got in and cut the Brazilian peppers, the exotics, way back, and now they're just starting to leaf out again. And my experience with this has been the best time to kill them for good is right then when they're starting to leaf out again, because you can spray them. I think rodeo is approved for that area. And you want to get them while they're still low again before they grow up too much. So I don't know who's going to be in charge of that, but y'all might want to think about tackling that problem now while it's manageable instead of those peppers getting grown back up and being a nuisance again. So, but it's a great trail. We really enjoyed it. It's the 3 miles is a good hike. It's a good exercise, and the adventure trail's pretty neat too. So again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, and kind of in addition to what Commissioner O'Brien was just saying, there might be some opportunity whenever there needs to be some kind of mitigation of some kind for improvements on that, to actually have those that need some mitigation credit of some kind to improve those natural areas.
Exactly.
I hope we're on the list for that, or everybody's kind of thinking in that direction.
It's interesting because we have the 4 different ownerships. Each property has its unique needs for mitigation at one time or another, and different, there are different goals for those separate projects, but they come together for this trail system, and that is something we want to keep looking at, is the best time and opportunities to keep the pepper at bay, and even at some point try to thin out or reduce the Australian pine, which is also an invasive exotic.
Thank you. Commissioner Solari.
I just want to say I'm looking forward to the opening on Friday. I'm going to be wearing shorts because I definitely intend to.
Thanks for the warning.
Yeah, no, I'm not looking forward to it anyways, but.
I'm not looking shorts when I'm walking in the world.
Attendance just went down.
Bring your sunglasses.
Did you just compel Commissioner Zork to say something about this?
But Jackie and I have walked it probably about 10 times so far, and it's just one of those great additions to the county. So just want to take the opportunity to thank you, the Land Trust, all the other partners involved. It's something that I think we can all be happy about. This is one of the few things that we've done that has very little controversy and a lot of benefit to the whole community. So thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Well, we really appreciated you on this project. You've been a champion from the beginning. And as I said, we've had all of your support, except for Commissioner Zork's. But that's because you weren't here yet. So.
Give me time.
I knew you'd pull him in. Ken, just want to thank you for all your hard work and all of the partners involved with the project. Once again, I believe that just bearing in mind about the overflow parking, there'll probably be a lot of folks that want to go to the ribbon cutting. Again, do you want to
sure.
tell folks exactly where they should be?
Yeah, what we're going to do is the River Park Place community is permitting the overflow to park in their community, which is right next door. So when folks pull in at the blinking light into that little short bit of 8th Street on the east side of the boulevard, there'll be signs and someone directing traffic accordingly. So people will either be parking in the River Park Place lot or over in the Lagoon Greenway, which has 11 spaces only. So,
looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you once again.
Mr. Chairman, just Ken, one last question. You showed the picture of Roland DeBlois out there. Was he smiling by any chance while he was out there working?
We're not sure because he was facing away from the camera. So
dang, that might have been a chance to get a picture of him smiling once. But
I actually really want to thank Roland, because Roland has been instrumental in this project right from the beginning. We've been working on this for about 4 years now, and he's really been there all the way through. We've had to apply and reapply for some of these grants, and he's stuck with us. And so thank you for that opportunity to thank Roland.
He's smiling now. I see him in the back of the room.
Okay.
Thank you, Roland.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a proclamation for designating February 21st, 2012 as Harlem Ambassadors Basketball Game and Show Night at Sebastian River High School. I'd like to call our old friend Jim Davis, President of Indian River County NAMI Association, to the podium. There he is with basketball in hand.
Basketball in hand.
It's my honor to give you this proclamation in the spirit of awareness, designating February 21st, 2013 as Harlem Ambassadors Basketball Game and Show Night at Sebastian River High School. Whereas 1,713 persons were treated for mental illness at the Behavioral Health Center in Indian River County in 2011. whereas the National Alliance on Mental Illness in Indian River County is dedicated to improving the lives of those suffering from mental illness and their families. And whereas the Florida Comets AAU Youth Basketball Organization is dedicated to empowering local area youth with the discipline and skills needed to be college-level basketball players and successful students. And whereas NAMI in Indian River County and Florida Comets AAU Youth Basketball Organization, both 501c3 nonprofit organizations, are joining together to host the Harlem Ambassadors basketball game and show at Sebastian River High School Gymnasium on Thursday, February 21st, 2013 at 6:30 p.m. to raise funds to help mentally ill and youth basketball. And whereas the internationally acclaimed Harlem Ambassadors offer a unique brand of exhibition basketball featuring high-flying slam dunks, dazzling ball handling tricks, and hilarious comedy routines, and have helped to raise millions of dollars for local charities. And whereas the local Florida Comets All-Stars will play the Harlem Ambassadors in exciting and entertaining basketball game on February 21st, 2013 at the Sebastian River High School gym. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that February 21st, 2013 is hereby designated as Harlem Ambassadors Night in Indian River County, Florida, and in the board wishes for a successful event adopted this 8th day of January 2013, signed by all 5 county commissioners. Jim Davis.
Thank you. Jim Davis, president of the local chapter of NAMI. I want to thank you for the proclamation and invite you out to Sebastian River High School. It's going to be a great, fun evening. We hope to sell 1,600 tickets and bring the youth together with the adults that love basketball to Sebastian River High School. It's going to be a fabulous charity event. It'll raise awareness on mental illness and raise some funds for youth basketball in the community. So we invite you out. Tickets are only $10. This is a nationally acclaimed venue. It's a fabulous show. It blends really good basketball. Some of the players that are going to be playing with the Ambassadors have been in the pros for as long as 18 years. And it's not just men basketball players on the Ambassadors team. There's 2 women that will knock your socks off. They are fabulous basketball players, even better than Freddie Wolfhard. But it'll be a great event, and tickets are only $10. So thank you for the proclamation and the support the community's given us.
Jim, just real quick, with NAMI, if somebody would like to become involved with your organization, just to give a shameless plug right now about how they can get involved, or if they need some of that support.
NAMI has over 1,300 affiliates across the U.S., Canada, and other parts of the world. NAMI is a grassroots advocacy organization. We offer free education to the community. We have a course beginning called Family to Family course. It's a free 12-week course that goes through all the aspects of mental illness you can imagine. How to care for the mentally ill, their medications, what the brain disorders the research is showing. NAMI is just a great organization. It's only $35 a year to join NAMI, and the benefits are amazing. You get magazines every month, you get state-of-the-art notices on research that NAMI is funding. And mental illness is a very important topic in our country. And it's appropriate for us to get together as a grassroots community to get educated about it and advocate for it and do what we can do to help.
And if they want to try to get a hold of the organization?
You can contact me personally. We have a website. We have an email address, ircnami@yahoo.com. You can email us. We meet tonight at the United Way building. We meet every first Tuesday of the month. This is the second Tuesday because the 1st of January was the first, and we didn't meet the first. But it's every month, first Tuesday of the month, 6:30, on the second floor of the United Way building. And we're a great group of people that would love to have you come and get people involved.
Thank you.
Well, Jim, thank you once again. You said when you were retired that you weren't going too far, and you didn't. And thank you for all you're doing with NAMI and getting the Harlem ambassadors here in Sebastian. So I want to again invite everybody to attend. This is a great way to donate, contribute, and support NAMI, and have a great time. There's a lot of excitement on the court.
Yeah.
So thank you once again, and I'd like to give you this proclamation.
Thank you. And one other thing, if anyone would like to send a youth to the basketball game, you can donate $6. We will make a ticket available to the Boys and Girls Club youth, free of charge for that contribution. And we will put your name on the flyer that says this ticket was donated by Joe Fletcher, or whatever business or whatever entity you would like on that ticket.
All right, sir.
I'm sure we'd all like to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll give it to the youth guy, whoever needs it.
Thank you.
Take care of that. Good job, Jim. Thanks.
Hey, you want to play in the game?
Well, I might. Jim, you like the proclamation? I didn't get the ball in hand, too. So I thought you were going to start some tricks.
I can do that.
We'll see that night.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
I'll be dunking the ball that night.
Maybe we'll have to invite Freddie over to show him how it's done. All right, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of November 13, 2012, and the regular meeting of November 20th, 2012.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Davis, second by Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Informational items, there are none. On the consent agenda, I would like to pull item K Kilo. Gentlemen?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Davis, second by Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Well, item K Kilo, the Mental Health Association funding for fiscal year 2012-2013. I realize that there has been a series of events that have drawn our controller and administrator to make that decision to move forward to suspend funding in spirit of looking at the timeliness of the letter as well as the actions. I believe that there have been some moves that have maybe drawn me to believe that the indicated corrections that were suggested by the administrator are now in order. Specifically, the Mental Health Association has created a new board with the exception of two members that were there just a month or two prior to the series of events. But there is a new board and a new acting CEO, and at this time I'd like to at least table this action and in anticipation of this new and improved board. I understand that they are going to seek all of the direction of all of their benefactors and supporters, and I believe that the step in the right direction has been made. I don't know if, Jason, you'd like to open a discussion on that?
Let me say this. I think you're better to approve this and have them come back to us and tell us, suspend funding for right now until we're sure, rather than continue funding and not be sure. I'd rather, we can always bring the funding back. We just want to protect our money and make sure they're on their feet. And it would be on an agenda in no time at all. Or if they met with us and we're comfortable, we'll start the funding again. But I think you need to vote too, because we've suspended the funding. We've sent the letter. I thought it was in the best interest to protect the county's money. And so Jason sent the letter. So I think I'd prefer it was approved and then come back and when we know they're on sound footing and we're not just sending money.
Most certainly, the suspension action, Joe, was more than called for, given the certain circumstances that were presented and well discussed throughout the community and the media as well. And I commend you for taking that action, but I believe that In the interim, looking at the timeliness of the action and what has occurred, I believe that this group has moved forward. This well-needed group in Indian River County, we just talked about mental illness and the needs, and at this point, I'm concerned about any interruption of service as opposed to something that can be delayed for 1 week until we have the opportunity to have a presentation by the new board or the CEO, which I have spoken to one of the members and asked if they would like to come before us, and this way they can clear the air to the public and in front of this commission just to discuss their plans as well.
Mr. Chairman, I see this as simply ratification for a move that the staff has already made. And given that, I think it's very appropriate. I mean, I didn't think about, when reading the stories in the newspapers, I didn't think about the county's $26,000 that they'd thrown into the pot, but very much appreciate that Joe and Jason stopped that funding during this period of time. And the staff recommendation notes that it's until new leadership is in place and they make some contact with us. So I think it's very appropriate, and I think that when the Mental Health Association gets fully reformed, it's a good opportunity for them to come and introduce themselves to the county. So I'm going to go, well, I'm not, if anybody goes to support a motion for you, that's fine, but I believe the appropriate thing to do is to move with staff recommendation here and to open or welcome the new board of the Mental Health Association when it does come before us.
The only thing I'm concerned about is an interruption of service for the people who are served by the organization. I understand, and it was well-founded, the actions, gentlemen, fine actions for the given set of circumstances, but I believe the set of circumstances have now changed drastically, and we're just short of either a presentation or conversation. But that's the pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I think you're correct that they have done a lot as far as the reorganization of the board. The former CEO stepped down. I just read today that they've hired an interim CEO. So I think you're correct. They have been making the proper steps. Unfortunately, there's still the state investigation of some of their financial affairs. And I think that, to me, is the bigger concern, what that investigation might turn up. So I think I'm more on the line of going along with the staff recommendation until that state investigation of their financial matters is completed. I share your concern for the patients that they serve and the need there, but I think we have a fiduciary duty to all the taxpayers that we need to make sure that the funds we give out are going to the proper use and things like that. What I would add is maybe a caveat that, Jason, I think most of this is on a reimbursement basis. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Maybe as a compromise then, I would say we go ahead with staff recommendation, and maybe at the same time, if they do have a billing that they can document to us clearly that it's a direct impact to a patient's benefit, and Jason and Joe would bring that to us to approve, that, maybe on an invoice and I hate to do that long term, but I think only maybe a very serious or emergency basis, we could consider an invoice on a invoice by invoice basis, and then if it's what we feel comfortable, we could go ahead and approve. But in the meantime, I think we're just going to, not pay every invoice that comes in, just as a compromise.
I agree with that.
Yes.
That sounds good. My question is there's been some changes. Does specifically, can anybody on staff tell me specifically what the other agencies are doing? I've heard they've withheld funds, now they've reinstituted funding.
We're not sure, obviously that's why we want to sit down before we do anything. I mean, it appears that way in the newspaper, but I don't necessarily go, well, I read in the newspaper. So I need to sit down, and we need to sit down with them and find out where they are. We suspended service. I mean, we suspended the reimbursement. And obviously, when we look at it, if they come across with something that we would reinstate it. I mean,
do you have invoices right now that are sitting somewhere?
We do not currently have a reimbursement request.
Right. So there's right now, we feel like there's no harm necessarily
right.
at this point.
Also, we're not a large funder of them. We give them 26,000. You know, the hospital gives them 400,000. I don't think us alone, we would be the, you know, the linchpin to them being able to continue.
No, I get that, but I think really it's I don't want us necessarily to be the lead agency on doing this investigation or however we feel comfortable. Probably.
Oh, no, we're not doing, we have nothing to do with the investigation. We only read it. I do not
Looking
want
into this situation to the point the staff feels comfortable, I think prudence would suggest that perhaps Mr. Plotkovich, with his contacts at the hospital, call up over there, find out what they're doing, and what they funded, and whether they feel like things have worked out. And Alan, just if you'll get with Mr. Baird on what you think is appropriate on the legal side of it, I guess.
Sure, that's easy enough. Yeah.
Commissioner O'Brien, it sounds like your compromise is a well-founded one.
Go ahead and make the motion. We approve staff recommendation with the addition that we would consider an invoice on an invoice-by-invoice cases if staff feels it's appropriate.
And more importantly than that, I'd like to make it so that it can be added. I don't want to complicate. I don't think it will. Now, if it comes up as an emergency item, I hope the commissioners will have professional courtesy not to.
If you would just give us, if you just give us permission, we don't want to hold it up. If we think we will review it.
That's even better.
We'll try not to hold it up. We'll be professional. We just suspended funding till we sit down with them, find out where they're going, get a comfort level. We're not going to cripple the organization because we're the smallest funder, I think. Sure. But we want to not also be a contributing factor to them not succeeding when they're trying to improve.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. I think it's a fine compromise. The next item is a request for public discussion by Robert L. Smith. We did receive a phone call that he would be delayed, and with your indulgence, we'd like to give him the opportunity if he arrives during the remainder of the meeting. Thank you, gentlemen. Next item is departmental matters. Item 12A, which is community development, consideration for meeting dates for proposed amendments to county's land development regulations, LDRs, to allow outdoor vehicle storage in the CL, limited commercial, and CG, general commercial zoning districts. Memorandum dated December 17th, 2012. We have Stan and Bob.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Good morning.
For the record, Stan Bowling, County Planning Director. A few months ago, the board directed staff to initiate a land development regulation to allow outdoor commercial vehicles to be stored in the CL and CG districts. Staff has initiated that change and had a hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission. Because the proposed change would change a list of uses that are allowed in certain zoning districts, Florida statutes requires that the board hold 2 public hearings for this particular type of land development regulation amendment. And so this morning, staff is requesting that the board set those hearing dates. Another part of the Florida statutes reads that one of those 2 hearings needs to be held after 5 p.m. unless the board by 4/5 majority votes that it can be held at a regular morning meeting. Staff's recommendation is that you hold the hearings at the January 22nd board hearing in the morning and the regular board meeting on February 5th in the morning. But again, the board can decide if it wants an after 5 meeting, and we'll make sure the chambers are available for that. Be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman, I have always felt that when we have an opportunity to have an evening meeting, it behooves us to open it up, and I realize it could be a little bit more inconvenience on staff and time and such, but I do get comments from a lot of people that ask why we don't have our regular meetings in the evening sometimes. So I think, maybe to side on the air of caution, I think an evening meeting would be appropriate, and I'm available either of those 2 dates for an evening meeting, and that'd just be my 2 cents worth.
I don't have
Thank
a
you,
problem.
Commissioner O'Brien. Commissioner Davis?
I don't have a dog in the hunt either way, so.
Gentlemen?
Stan, if we do have an evening meeting, does staff have any preference on either one?
No, it wouldn't. That doesn't matter to us, and I believe the chambers are available either one of those evenings.
Okay, I'll just make a motion that the first meeting is the regular meeting of Tuesday, January 22nd at 9:05 a.m., and the second meeting would be a special call meeting Tuesday, February 5th at 5:01 p.m.
I'll second that.
Just clarification, you mentioned special call, so are we going to have the whole meeting at night or just this portion of the meeting?
I think just to hear this.
Okay, that's why I just wanted to.
Just come back. I believe it's an opportunity for those who
I think we'll
cannot
be coming
attend
back in
during
about
the day
15 minutes.
to come back in the evening.
Right.
Yeah, with staff and everything like that, there's no reason, in my opinion, to have everybody here that unless they have to be here for that.
Okay, that's a motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Flesher. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you again, gentlemen. Two for two. I'll tell you what.
Thanks.
Okay, next item is the Public Works, a resolution for paving, millings, improvements, and to set a public hearing for the 7th Place Petition Millings project from 63rd Avenue to 60th Avenue in the Pine Tree Park subdivision, Indian River County, project number 1212, memorandum dated December 21/2012.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Mora, Public Works Director for the county. What you have before you is the first step in a petition paving, or in this case, a petition millings project. As you may recall, last year we came to the board in response to requests from residents in Pine Tree Park who wanted a cheaper alternative to our petition paving process. They had many unpaved roads in their subdivision. In fact, the only paved road is 63rd Avenue, which goes through between 4th and 8th Street. They came to us basically wanting to help with their dust problem and to give a better surface on the roadway for vehicles to travel on. The board agreed to allow staff to move forward with a petition millings process, which would mirror the petition paving process, but just be a cheaper alternative in placing millings on the roads. The residents went and collected signatures. Their initial goal was to do all of the unpaved roads in the subdivision. They then had to distill that back to just 7th Place, which is where they were able to collect enough signatures to do about a half a mile of 7th Place, which is an east-west road just south of 8th Street. What you have before you is the first step. It's two resolutions. The first resolution is a resolution for providing the millings and creating the project and agreeing to the 75-25 cost share, 25% county, 75% residents. The second resolution is to set a public hearing on this issue, which would set the assessment. That is going to be scheduled for February 12th. That's when the residents can appear and give their input. So the staff is asking for both resolutions to be passed, and it's our recommendation that that be done.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any questions?
Just, Chris, when we go through this and you talk to the property owner, it's just, I think it's important to keep reminding them of the unintended consequences of what they're doing. And when we go from a dirt road to a paved road, we've seen the traffic increases and the speed of traffic increases. And I think we just need to keep telling them that, so that when they come back to us a year from now and says, oh, there's too much traffic, we want stop signs and sidewalks and conveyor belts and everything else. That's the unintended consequences when you go from a dirt road to a paved road.
Yes, we've actually had two public meetings with the residents when we've talked about the cost of the project and like you mentioned, the unintended consequences of paving roads. They're aware of that. One thing that they wanted to do in order to keep the cost down, normally when we do a petition paving, we build 20 to 22 feet of roadway, two 10 or 11 foot lanes. In order to keep costs down, and in some areas where 7th Place is only 16 feet wide, they did not want to widen the road. They did not want drainage improvements. They did not want any culverts fixed. They just wanted to place millings where the dirt is today. And so that's what we agreed to. So the road will not be the typical widened local road. It will just be whatever envelope that dirt road is in today, that's where the millings are going. And it varies, I think, from 16 feet up to 20 feet in places. So that will be a deterrent to cut through and speeding. But Commissioner Bryan, you're correct. When you pave one road and leave the others unpaved, it does tend to draw traffic.
Okay. With that, I'll move staff recommendation to adopt both resolutions and to allocate the funding into the petition payment account.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Solari. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. That's 3 for 3. Utility Services, approval of the Amendment 1 to Work Order Number 3 with Kimberly Horn and Associates Incorporated, memorandum dated December 11, 2012. Welcome, Vin. Good morning. You
Is that on? Then there's a little button. There you go.
Is that on now?
Yep.
He's new at this.
That's an inauguration. They did that. They shut it down for you.
For the record, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. This is work order number 3, Kimberly Horn & Associates, doing some work for our water stabilization process at our treatment plants. And the process was discovered, was not part of the original plan, to help automate some of the degasifiers on our Permian and the post-treatment side of things. So this is to install some actuators for our degasifiers. In doing so, will result in some efficiencies that are different than how we operate today. So we're asking for approval based on staff recommendations to move forward with the approval of work order.
Move to approve.
Second. Motion by Commissioner Davis, second by Commissioner Fleischer. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Next item on the agenda is the county attorney matters. That's item 13A, which is the possible new incentives in the enterprise zone memorandum dated December 31st, 2012. Counselor.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. As mentioned in the board memo, back in 2005, the board collaborated with the City of Vero Beach and established an enterprise zone around the airport and the area north of the airport. The concept of an enterprise zone is you take an area which is economically distressed and you create a package of incentives for businesses to relocate or expand within that area so that it will then be economically improved. This, this board and the city have created various incentives for our enterprise zone. And at this point we have a menu of incentives which I've covered in my report that exist generally throughout the county, including enterprise zones. We have some state incentives that are specific to the enterprise zone, and we have some local county and city incentives which are specific to the enterprise zone. Against that background, this summer, the board had a conversation about creating other possible incentives within the enterprise zone. And one of the possibilities mentioned at that time was either a partial or total reduction of utility franchise fees for relocating or expanding businesses within the enterprise zone for some limited period of time. And that discussion ultimately led to my office being charged with the task of looking at an entire spectrum of possible incentives and bringing them back eventually to this board, which we're doing today, for initial consideration. Ultimately, I view today's exercise as really an exclusion exercise. In other words, we've listed 8 possible incentives, and I would like today for the board to tell me those which you're not interested in, so that we can take the remaining that you are interested in, we can start analyzing them more deeply and eventually bring them back to you for a final selection process on those. In terms of compiling our list of possible incentives, we engaged in actually a fairly in-depth research process, a lot of internet research. We talked to various counties. We also reviewed various enterprise zone reports issued by the state of Florida and OPAGA in the Florida legislature, and drew out of those originally a list of about 15 possibilities. Then we sat down with Chamber of Commerce and with the Planning Department and went over all of those possibilities and found that we actually had some of them already covered, and eventually worked that down to the 8 that you see in front of you. We then took that list of 8 possible incentives and brought them to the Indian River County Enterprise Zone Development Agency on November 8th, and they offered their comments, and I've recited some of their comments in here, as well as including the minutes of that meeting, so you can see what the members of that agency thought about these different proposed incentives. And before I go through them individually, I want to make some quick comments. Number one, some of these incentives are real in the sense of they actually involve some dollars. And for a relocating or expanding business, it might make a difference financially to them. Others of these proposed incentives are small in dollar amount, and they're almost symbolic, reflecting an attitude by the county that we are very supportive and encouraging of facilities relocating and expanding in that zone. So as I say, some are meaningfully important from a financial standpoint, some are less than that. And the second thing I'd want to mention is, as I say, county staff has not yet fully vetted all of these possibilities. Just in the interest of saving some county staff time, we decided to vet them initially to the point of concluding, well, there might be some interest here, and now we're bringing them to the board with the idea, as I said, that you'll look through that list, you'll tell us what you're interested in and what you're not interested in, and then we'll take those that you are interested in and move forward with a more serious and analytical approach to trying to decide if they're a good idea or not. With that, I'll just briefly mention the 8. One is to subsidize in whole or in part county impact fees. That would be one that would involve, arguably could involve some serious dollars. 2 is financing impact fees on more favorable terms. Generally, we don't finance impact fees in most cases. Over on the water sewer side, we do that. There's an interest rate and a term which is applied, usually 5 years at 5.75%. Perhaps you could consider more favorable terms of financing impact fees within the enterprise zone. 3 is to waive or subsidize development fees. The bottom line is when someone comes to develop property within any property here in Indian River County, they face certain charges which are listed here. Well, the board could consider waiving or subsidizing some of those charges. The 4th is subsidizing in whole or in part water or sewer connection charges. Again, not a lot, but perhaps symbolic. Number 5 is creating an infrastructure improvement program specific to the enterprise zone. We already have that general authority to make infrastructure improvements in the name of economic development in the county, but we really don't have a program which sets that out specifically. And perhaps, again, somewhat symbolically, you could create a program listing factors that you might consider within the enterprise zone. 6 is to modify the jobs grant program to increase the bonus for jobs created in the enterprise zone. We currently have a jobs grant program generally in the county. Within the enterprise zone, there is a 10% bonus to that program if the jobs created in the enterprise zone. You may consider increasing that, 20%, maybe 50%, whatever. 7 is waive or subsidize a local business tax receipt for a limited period of time for new businesses either relocating or expanding in the area, perhaps 3 to 5 years. Again, very small amount, symbolic. And 8 is waiving in whole or in part the franchise fee or fee in lieu of franchise fee for a limited period of time to new or expanding businesses within the enterprise zone. Again, that could involve some real dollars. We do have obviously electricity charges, water sewer charges in the enterprise zone, and waste pickup. And all of those are subject to a 6% franchise fee, so that could be significant. Those are the 8 possibilities. The only thing I'd mention, as I say through my memo here, in some cases we're talking about just waiving the fee so that there is no collection or payment at all, or in whole or in part, or subsidizing it. Because what happens in some of these categories is the amount has to be paid. So, for example, impact fees, they really have to be paid. When we have building permit fees, which go to our building permit, which is our building department, which is an enterprise fund, they really need to be paid. So in that case, we'd be talking about money from some source, taking that and paying these amounts on behalf of the new company. So those are the 8 possibilities we came up with. And at this point, I'll answer any questions you might have. Again, all we're looking for is whether you have initial interest in some or all of these.
Thank you, Councilor. Commissioner O'Brien.
Just real quick then, I would say item 1, I would not be in favor. Number 2, not in favor. Number 3, yes. Number 4, yes. Number 5, no. Number 6, yes at 20%, but no at the 50% level. Number 7, which is waiving the local business tax for a limited period of time, I'd say either it's an all or none thing. I don't want to have staff have to be tracking 20 different businesses over a 3 or 5 year period. So I'd say either we say no, or if we say yes, it's just no business fee within the enterprise zone and not have staff have to worry about it. And number 8, no. And part of my reason is again, like on that number 7 with the time period, I think that just creates more staff time and more confusion, and it isn't really, to me, a good clear incentive that somebody would look at. I think 3 and 4, the development fees, and then we would have to pay the building permit fee. I think that's something that a new business would encounter in any county, and be able to say, hey, we're paying that for you, would be a good incentive. And the others, I don't think would either work or would be too much burden. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Mr. Blockwich, is that really what you're after, is for a yes, no, yes, no, yes, no?
Essentially, yes, from the board.
Right.
Can I say? Can I say
and
something?
You would be opposed to 1? You said, go back over those one more time.
Let's see, 1 is no, 2 is no, 3 and 4, yes, 5, no, 6, yes at the 20% incentive, not the 50. Number 7 is either we waive it for good or no. I don't like the 3 to 5 year time period. And then number 8 is no.
I don't know whether I'm going to be victorious in this or not, or if that even is the proper term, but I'd say to have a plan on all of this is prudent. And the reason why I say that, there are things that we can do to be competitive that this community's done in the past. And they range anywhere from putting in granting a loan, like, if you will, for an infrastructure out at the CVS. Although we got cleansed off that through the judicial sale process, that loan, with it being junior to the first mortgage, that infrastructure is still in place. That infrastructure is still there as far as the water, sewer, and the roads. Unlike other incentive programs where we've actually taken cash out of the general fund to companies, we've got the jobs, but that is no longer there. And this is a way for us to be, in my opinion, competitive in the event that we have a targeted industry that we'd like to either attract or encourage to grow. And if things didn't work out the way we anticipated, those improvements are there. That building is there. It might be vacant, but it's still there for the next opportunity without having to duplicate those funds. So I kind of like this better than other decisions that I might have made in the past on some economic development issues. And so I'm going to disagree with you on that, and I'm going to start with, I want more information in depth on all of it.
Danny. Thank you, Commissioner Davis.
Can I make a comment? I'd like to point out that we have done this, you have the ability to do this on a case-by-case basis.
Mm-hmm.
And anywhere in the county. One of the problems you're going to run into is, and I've run into it in industrial when we start going down that road, is that, hey, listen, I've held the property for 25 years in this county, and I'm not in the enterprise zone, and I didn't know this was going to happen, and you're going to subsidize them and not me. I think it shouldn't be just an enterprise zone, and it should be based on the magnitude. You have to look at each on a case-by-case basis. What kind of impact? How much are they going to pay in wages?
Yeah.
Those kind of things. Otherwise, I think these are, I will say, because you're going to have to take most of these out of the general fund.
Mm-hmm.
And so you may have to increase taxes. You want to make sure that they're going to have a significant impact on your community. And there's people who have bought commercial outside of the enterprise zone or all over the county, and they're going to say, why aren't we getting the same incentive? And you may run into that problem.
I agree with you.
And that was a concern at the enterprise zone meetings, as far as the concern for the fringe businesses that were just outside the enterprise zone. But Joe, you raised the point that you have we have selectively done some incentives in the enterprise zone, correct? And if that's the case, I believe that Helene, who's here, and I'm going to ask her to speak about it, Helene Kazeltine has been charged with marketing the enterprise zone. And if she can market all of these tools, I believe that this will draw us closer on the map of success for the enterprise zone, as opposed to something that may come up that we may apply. It can be sold as another tool, and awareness can be made and projected for more intrigue to invest in the enterprise zone. Commissioner Zorc.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for a great job putting that together, Alan. And a couple of things that I'd like to see. I think these are some good things to put on the table, but I think as going through looking at kind of, we've been working on this economic competitiveness review of what other counties have, which I know your background, you looked into that to somewhat. But I'd like to maybe have a call with the Enterprise Florida representative, and also use the assistance of Kirk Stegmeyer from the governor's office, who has said he would be willing to help with us, to look and see, to make sure we're not missing, not any stones not unturned. Is there anything else that's out there that we don't know to ask for that might be out there? Also, dealing with the enterprise zone specifically, is pursuing the boundary amendment process to look at expanding where the enterprise zone may be able to function, and that may change some of these things, or it might add things, or it might take something away potentially. And then also a potential free trade zone overlay, working with Congressman Posey's office, and now that they're going to be right down the hallway, they'll be a very, I think, a very willing, helpful party for us to explore that option. That's a multi-year process if we are successful, and it's a multi-year process if we're not successful. It's not an overnight thing. So what I'd like to see is to take these and say, okay, here's where we're at today. Let's see what else comes up over the next month as we finish up gathering some of this information, see what Helene's got to add to it, and kind of look at it as an overall package. And I think Commissioner Davis is right. Some of these may need to be county-wide, and if I had my druthers, I'd ask the governor's office in the state that we make the whole county the enterprise zone, because I think we've had some great drops in unemployment here lately, but I think as soon as citrus season's over, they kind of staffed up a little earlier. They had a pretty healthy crop. They had higher employment numbers during their season, which unfortunately I think we're going to see spikes at the end of season when these people drop off. So some of the ground we've gained, I think, is short-term, not long-term, that we still have a core problem to deal with. So I'd like to also look at how we could reach out to these other groups through the governor's office in Enterprise Florida. I want to have, when Helene goes to somebody and she has, here's what we have, and the list is so competitive beyond what the other people have, but I don't want to take where we're funding huge amounts of money from the general revenue side, but I want us to see how we can be competitive. And when somebody says, do you have this, do you have this, and I could envision a type of marketing brochure where our list is quite lengthy, and some of these may be symbol. I don't care if it's symbolic and it's a $10 item. I want it listed because it paints a picture of our willingness and cooperation of how we want to work with these people. So in part, I think I'd like to take the work Alan's done so far, probably in less than a month, come back with maybe some additional items and see what Helene has to add to this, and kind of come up with a strategy. Step one is, can we modify the enterprise zone? Okay, if so, how far, how much, and where? I've seen how some of the other counties have done it, and look at that, and then what other incentives may or may not be available based on a potential reconfiguration or additional area added to the enterprise zone, and then kind of bring the incentives as the overlay to some of this other outreached area. So that's kind of my thoughts on not taking an up or down vote on these 8 today. I think that's great. We've got the background on these. Is what else might there be, and see where it takes us over the next 30 days or so.
Thank you, Commissioner Zorc. Commissioner Solari?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First comment is that I certainly want to get a better idea of the potential costs of all of them before making any decisions. Going to something that the county administrator said about going to buy a case-by-case basis, I particularly don't like that. I think that we ought to set a level playing field for everybody who might be involved in this and not try to pick winners and losers. As soon as I get involved in that, I'm realizing it's well above my pay grade. And I also don't like the idea of expanding the enterprise zone at all. So my understanding is the enterprise zone was set up to help a particular area, and it reminds me of what we almost did with the brownfields out by Eneos. I mean, you take a program that's set up for a particular reason, and you just essentially make it meaningless because you can think you can get a little bit more to it. I also, off the top, but I'll hold it until it actually comes before us, I don't like 1 and 2. I'm more initially in favor of particularly 7, where we just waive a business tax receipt, and maybe do something with 8. But I also like to say that I think that our overall package is, for the county and the enterprise zone, is reasonably good today. There may be things that will help the enterprise zone particularly, but I don't know that I'd want to go any further with a lot more incentives for everything around the county. I think that just builds in more distortions, which will harm us more in the long term than help us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Solari. Commissioner Davis, once again.
Yes. You know, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts in this thing, and of course, I really believe that this commission has basically said that we think that commercial impact fees can be relatively high, higher than we'd like to see them here. And of course, you know, you're not going to. There's nobody up here that's really wanting to waive impact fees for a Publix or for a. I mean, you just pick that kind of thing. But you know, as far as number one, this is really the opportunity that we have to, in my opinion, to lay it out in there. And I do like the idea of it coming before us if it's something that we can be competitive in attracting a specific kind of industry here. Do so. And, you know, I don't want to get focused on whether or not to expand the enterprise zone, but I like what Commissioner Zork said, you know, as far as if expand these opportunities. And we don't control the enterprise zone. That's really dictated to us by the state government. We do control basically what's in front of us here, and we don't have to limit this to just the enterprise zone to address what Mr. Baird has said. So I'd like to look at this countywide. I'd like to look at it with all of them in there, and I'm not afraid to be able to make a decision based on a company that comes before us, specifically keeping in mind. This is very similar to the job grants in the fact that if they don't perform, it goes away. This is similar in fact, if they don't perform, it's still there. That infrastructure is still there. Those improvements are still there. That structure is still there. It doesn't go away. So,
Mr. Chairman, just
that's an interesting point.
Just to follow up, you know, as Commissioner Solari pointed out, he don't want to get involved picking winners and losers and stuff. So, I'd almost say let's kind of take a look at this from more of the second floor balcony view instead of. You know, if this will all add up to be $100,000 a year coming out of the general fund to give a little here, a little here, a little here, I'd suggest maybe our money would be, and again, we're picking winners, we're picking losers, we're saying existing, we're not giving you anything, but a new guy we're giving this to. Maybe instead we'd be better off taking that money and funding our economic development office at a higher level than we do, and spend more money attracting those businesses and spreading the word about what we have, and not having to, you know, pick winners and losers. Let's pick the county as the winner and do a better job promoting what the county currently offers. And because I know, looking at the other counties near us, we're way low, you know, even on a per capita basis on what we spend for economic development compared to the other counties. We're like,
I appreciate that.
Third worst in the state as far as, you know, per capita spending. So that might be a better use of a limited amount of tax dollars, is better promotion of the county, you know, from the top down.
Well, and again, just to bring it back to what we're discussing today, we're talking about the enterprise zone specifically, and I can appreciate that you would like to see this applied globally, but we were looking at tools or incentives that can be placed to enhance the likelihood that there would be some interest in the enterprise zone. It's interesting that some of the comments that have been made by this board are mostly consistent with some of the comments that were made at the enterprise zone meeting as well. There was some serious concerns on item number 1 specifically and that really wasn't encouraged to come forward. Again, this process was that our council, Alan Plakowich, had scanned other incentives in other counties and brought them forward to the committee level, and they were largely discussed. As you can see, there is in your backup, there is support or lack of support in many of these incentives. However, all of the incentives were brought forward because it is this commission's task to allot the time and funding for staff to go forward to examine it. This is going to be a difficult task. The process of figuring out what type of business will be brought into the enterprise zone and what the cost factor will be a guess at best in some areas, whether it be manufacturing or retail or another commercial establishment. The cost of some of these tools will vary, and I believe that Jason will have a long task to give a best guesstimate on the cost factors. Interestingly, you pointed out, Commissioner O'Brien, that you were not in favor of the 50%. That some members were in favor, but largely, yes, that is a bit draconian, and that might cause a bit of concern for those fringe businesses when they see that there's been a 50% reduction. So I agree with you on that, and so did the committee. But many of these were supported by the committee, with the exception of just, I believe, 2. But with that, Helene?
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I could, because you may want to chime in on a few of these other items, Helene, so if you could pardon me for a minute. Part of the reason on the looking at geographically changing the boundary of the enterprise zone is 100% of the current enterprise zone is currently served 100% by the City of Vero Beach Power, which you take all the incentives of the other enterprise zone, they're immediately negatively impacted, because if you're a manufacturer using $200,000 a year in electric, you're paying about a $50,000 to $60,000 a year premium because you're in the enterprise zone, which is served by the City of Vero Beach Power. That all the incentives are now offsetting your higher cost of operation. So part of my reasoning was to look at moving part of the enterprise zone outside of the City of Vero Beach grid, is because of the higher power cost. And in addition, you have about 1,200 acres in the enterprise zone that are not ever going to be usable, period, because of flyover zones, taxiway areas, environmentally protected area north of the airport. So you have a large kind of geographical area, but you can't look at it and go, wow, we can use all that. You can't. So you have a lot of unusable area. Of the area that's usable, you have a single provider, which hopefully one day will become a different provider at a more competitive rate. And so that's part of my reasons. If that never happens, I want to have the advantages, incentives of an enterprise zone that doesn't have the City of Vero Beach Power cost associated with it, so having some flexibility with that. But now go ahead, Helene. Thank you.
Thank you, Helene.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Helene Castletine, Economic Development Director with the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce, and also serve as the Enterprise Zone Coordinator. And I really appreciate you having this discussion. Really means a lot. And just for a little bit of background, we did do a survey. We went through the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, which coordinates the statewide Enterprise Zone program. We did reach out to the state coordinator, and he sent out a survey on our behalf to all the Enterprise Zone coordinators in Florida. There are, 50, 60-something Enterprise Zones in Florida now. We only got a handful of responses back. He requested them to respond directly to me. We only got a handful of responses back. A couple of them said that they don't offer anything locally within their enterprise zone. They only offer what the state offers. But I would say the best information we received back was from the city of Fort Myers and their local programs. I forwarded that information to the county attorney, but like the business tax receipt, formerly known as the occupational license, they said that is the most widely used program they have at the local level. They've had over 5,000 businesses take advantage of that, whereas, maybe it's only like $40 for a business license. It's not the money so much, it's more the perception. So they said that that has been the most widely used program at the local level is the business tax receipt program. They also do have a water and sewer impact fee waiver for new businesses, and they and it's only for certain impact fees. It doesn't include road impact fees. So anyway, but we did reach out to my colleagues throughout the state to see what other programs are in use and what's the best use and what is not used. So we did get a little bit of feedback from that, not a whole lot. So I really appreciate your conversation, and we can look into expanding the boundary, keeping in mind our enterprise zone is up for sunset review in 2015, as is the statewide program up for sunset review by the state legislature in 2015. But we can look into expanding boundaries. They still, whatever census tracts or whatever areas that we do consider still have to meet that minimum threshold criteria that the state has in place. But we certainly can look into that. And the timing might be good because we're also updating our strategic plan for the Enterprise Zone Development Agency. So the timing might be really good on that too.
Just, I don't know. If you want a motion to move this forward, or are you looking for direction? Are you ready for that? Because I'm ready to make one and see what happens here. And you know, before I do that, on the jobs increasing the amount from 20 to 50%, you know, my thought process on that would be instead of increasing the amount, I would rather increase the duration. That way, again, it goes back to more of a performance. It's maybe a similar dollar fashion in the event, but they'd have to stay there 4 years versus the 3 years, or 5 years versus the 3 years that we currently have right now for the job grants applications. It's still, you know, still additional incentive, but I think that's where I'd rather go than versus just doubling that up for the first year, second year, and third year.
So currently, we're if they come in at the county wage, it's $5,000. Paid over 3 years.
Right.
So are you saying we take the 5,000, add 20% to it?
And do 4 years.
And do 4 years.
Yeah. I mean, that's, if you, that's what I'd rather see versus just increasing that up front. And then secondly, you know, what I'm looking at, what I'm hearing, and maybe I'm alone in this, I'm hearing about just the levels of, or the barriers of entry in trying to get something started, trying to get it established. And, you know, whenever you're looking at the cost of impact fees, whenever you come in, you know, to pay that much money just for air, that doesn't include your, you know, the land, your actual construction costs and things like that. You know, those are things that I think that we could be aggressive on. And, I mean, it would be only the fourth time I've made a motion without getting a second about reducing the impact fees, you know, in the past couple of years. So I'm not even going to go down that road again, but this is a way that in the event this board had the opportunity to look at all of it, we might be able to find some common ground there, because I don't know, you know, just ask yourself, you know, how aggressive would we be today if somebody like a CVS came in? What, you know, what of these would you by chance be willing to put on the table? And I'm thinking a lot of them.
Sure.
So I move that we move forward with this. Mr. Plakowicz, you've heard of everything from everybody all over the place here, so I don't know what kind of direction you're getting other than I move to approve. You know?
He's thinking, this is like herding cats, is what he's thinking right now.
And I'll second that for discussion. My concern today was that we were going to be looking at these 8 items and direct staff, council, to look further into it and discuss this with the Office of Management Budget and Joe and see where the finances would be and what will be cost factor. We're not approving this today.
Right.
We're just moving for staff time to examine this further, correct?
And I would like to modify my motion just real quick. I'd like to make it county-wide, not just enterprise-wide.
Can I?
All the above.
These are very hard to estimate because we don't know what industry is going to come in, what size of industry,
exactly,
what type of facility, if it's got on-site improvements already, if it doesn't have on-site improvements. I mean, that's a number that's almost an impossibility to project. You've almost got to do it on a case-by-case basis because there's no way we can, and one of the things Commissioner Zork is right about, most of the failures we've had in manufacturing has been because of the electric. You can do everything you want, you can't beat the ongoing operating.
Yeah.
If I could address that, one, I mean, I think the easy thing to do is to take 3 examples. One from a small company that added about 10 employees, one from a medium-sized employee that added about 25 employees, and one from an Ineos. That way, you can, if you use those 3 companies, you already have the amounts that some of those incentives cost, and then you spread the Excel spreadsheet over to the right, Jason, and fill in the new blanks, so the cost of the new incentives.
Do we assume what kind of industry? Manufacturing? Because there's all kinds of industries.
As I said, I just take 3 actual examples of what we had. So
that are recipients of our job grants.
Yeah, recipients of our jobs that we know.
Okay, got you.
That we've had. So it's things that would somewhat like, I mean, Ineos is not going to come into the enterprise zone, but 3 companies of, small, medium, large, that we already have, where we've got a lot of the information already done, and then just say that if it were this company that came in, then with these incentives, or these incentives would add this extra cost.
And Mr. Chairman, one thing adding to that, that's kind of how we're doing this economic competitiveness review. We took 3 or 4 different business types. We took the smaller threshold, the larger threshold, so actually you could add it as almost another column to this document that we're putting together of a potential impact cost of what it might be to add these to it. But that's kind of how we broke out our this review that we're doing is we took, I think we ended up with 4 types: industrial, retail, manufacturing, and medical office type research or some type of medical facility. And it was we broke it into small and large, so that, because I know on our chart we have some fee structures for some things that are up to X number of square feet and then above, and it's kind of like a tiered structure. So we might be able to add it as part of this working document we have going on to quantify what some of these might cost.
Thank you, Commissioner Zoll. Commissioner Davis, you mentioned that you wanted to change your motion.
Yeah, just do countywide and then all of them. That's my motion.
And again, the proposal is to discuss enhancements for the enterprise zone.
So I think that Mr. Baird really brought up some legitimate points there. I think that, I think that this is an enhancement to the enterprise zone if we do it, because it's enhancing the tools in our toolkit that we have, not just countywide, it's in the enterprise zone also. So I don't think it falls short of that. I just think that when you look at it, I'll give you a good example. Go back to your map there of the enterprise zone on the corner of 43rd Avenue and 45th Street. The northwest corner of that is outside of the enterprise zone. And so, from that standpoint, Mr. Baird brings up I think, a very legitimate point there. And I think that really, why do we want to limit the county's economic ability to attract jobs that we might deem to be appropriate for our community and ones that we consider targeted industries when we could be doing that countywide?
Well, bring it out to a broad brush for the entire county, raise this to a whole new level. Mm-hmm. But I'll be happy to second that for the furtherance of discussion. Anyone else?
I like the idea so far.
So we're directing council to look at all of these items as far as the likelihood and applicability for the entire county and not exclusively to the enterprise zone. Is that correct?
Yes, that's my intent.
Question on the motion: if over the next 30 days, as we kind of finish up with Bill on some of the different Bill, on what we're looking at, a review of what some of the other counties have, if we find a 9th item or a 10th item to consider, can we throw that in?
Absolutely.
To be evaluated, the numbers wise, not that would be put in, but if something else is made aware of.
I think it should be brought before the board, most certainly as an added item by council over the next 30 or 60 days.
Okay.
And most certainly I'd be interested if there was anything out there that was not unaddressed that might be in the likelihood of drawing more individuals to invest in our county. Mm-hmm. But with that said, we're now looking at the motion is to bring this to examination for application for the entire county. I think I would feel more comfortable if we looked at enterprise zone and the county so that we can see the impact I have a fear that certain aspects of the proposals or the proposed discussion might be a bit too costly for the entire county, but might be a great incentive for the enterprise zone. I would just like the option to be able to vote on this at a later time if we can see the numbers or the estimated numbers, so that we're not just throwing it all out and saying it's just going to be too costly.
Well, until somebody takes advantage of it or even asks about it, there's no expense.
No expense at all.
And so, and until I see what the company is, what they do, and whether it's something that I think would fit well in this community, and what the perceived competition is on the other side, I can't make an educated decision on any of it. I mean, basically, these are just tools. Whenever somebody approaches us and they say, "Okay, this is what we do. This is the wage. This is the type of employment," and whenever they're showing us their, just the dynamics of the corporation, and they're going to say, "Okay, and we have an interest in." Here, your enterprise zone, we have an interest in being next to your landfill because this is what we do, and this is just until that comes in front of me, I can't make a decision on that, and this is giving me the opportunity to do so.
Well, again, but we'd be making a decision on a broad scale of the entire county. I believe that however difficult the task may be, I believe that our staff can come up with some likely numbers that we might be able to look at to determine whether this is an application for the county as opposed to the enterprise zone or both.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but
I'd like to direct staff to look at both. Look at the enterprise zone exclusively, the geographic area known as the enterprise zone, the way it stands. See if we can isolate some sort of numbers for the enterprise zone, and then the anticipated vision for the entire county. I don't think there's any harm because, again, today's discussion was to bring this forward for enhancement tools for investment into the enterprise zone. We might want to go with that as opposed to the entire county, or both, or the entire county. I would like to leave the options open, though, Commissioner.
Can I ask a question? Some of our newer employers that have moved in, they went into existing facilities. So 1 and 2 does not apply because, you look at Nat Boss and that the sister industry they brought up in North County doesn't apply. Are we going to assume, so I think what we have to address when we're going to address 1, 2 is we look at these and we may not have an example.
That's fine. And
of 1 and 2
in my
right
opinion,
now.
there's a reason why they moved into existing facilities.
Okay.
Is either one, it was what they needed, and it was from that standpoint, or B, it was the only thing that they could afford at the time versus customizing their own facility. And if it's not, if they go to a community where they have the opportunity to move in something that meets their needs a little bit more so than anything we've got that's ready built, that's where 1 and 2 would come into place in this thing. And that's exactly what I'm trying to get accomplished.
Okay.
So you want to clarify the motion?
I move all of it, and then you want to look at it. I want to look at it countywide, and if you want to look at it, I don't think it would change anything, but for the enterprise zone, so moved.
So seconded.
All in favor?
Motion by, if you want to give it a shot. Motion by Commissioner Davis, second by Commissioner Flesher. Any further discussion, gentlemen? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. We're going to take a 10-minute break. The meeting will now be called back to order, and the next item is the sale of surplus state land, Indian River Correctional Facility Institute, memorandum dated January 2nd, 2013. Mr. DeBrawl, Counselor.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. Back in August 2012, the Board approved a resolution exploring purchase of the Indian River Correctional Institute. This was closed earlier last year and declared surplus property and listed for sale, as were several other correctional institutes across the state. There you see an aerial view of the Correctional Institute. The entire parcel outlined in yellow consists of 99 acres. The inner ring, which I'm going to show you in a little bit, where the facilities are centered, consists of 18 acres of the 99-acre facility. There you get an idea of the different facilities or different buildings and improvements that are located on the Correctional Institute site. This schematic is the ring that I spoke about on the aerial. There are 11 different dormitories on that site, on the 18-acre site, 3 training and educational facilities. There's a medical facility, food and laundry service. There's a duplex residence on the site, a maintenance shed, and also a generator that are all there present on the site. After the county declared its interest in a possible purchase of the property, the next step, according to state statute and administrative rule, would be obtaining an appraisal of the property, and that's the step that we're at this morning. The Division of State Lands, a branch of the Department of Environmental Protection, has a list of appraisers. They went ahead and solicited bids from state-approved appraisers. The low bid came in from Steve Boyle of Boyle and Drake of Vero Beach at $8,991. The other appraisals ranged up from $24,000 to as high as $46,000. If the county would pursue purchase of the property, it would be able to do what it wishes with the land. Whatever improvements, whatever uses, whatever possible tenants or anything like that would be solely at the discretion of the board. A purchase would not have any restrictions tacked on by the state. I know that with other purchases of property from the state, sometimes there are deed restrictions or covenants that must be entered into as far as use only for recreational purposes would be one example. This would not be the case if the county would ultimately purchase the property. Other properties across the state have been appraised. One North Florida Correctional Institute, larger than this one, consisted of 250 acres. The appraiser went in and gave a significant value to the property itself, but then was of the opinion that the highest and best use consisted of a correctional institute, which would have pretty much zero value, and then concluded that demolition of the buildings would be a set-off or a deduction to the per acre price, and it came out to be quite a reasonable price of less than $2,000 per acre for the property. It may be that an appraisal for this type of property would yield the same thing given its location and its current use.
Did the state accept that, or do you?
Yes, the state accepted it.
Okay.
Interesting.
Since the last time we met, there have been a couple of other interests. A couple other groups have expressed an interest in use of the property. The sheriff has expressed an interest in the property since there is a shooting range on the site. Also, the charter high school has expressed an interest on use of the property because there is a food and laundry facility, maintenance facility. Their idea, and Mr. Waddell can expand on this more, would be going more toward a vocational type of use for the different buildings on the property. Mr. Waddell has been in touch with Representative Mayfield and explored the possibility of a lease. This is an option, although it's not the preference of the governor and the cabinet and the Division of State Lands. A lease is an option. It would be a long-term lease, 50 years, at a relatively low rate, $300 per month. However, there are significant restrictions that would be placed on such a lease. One of them being that the county wouldn't be able to land bank the property and just lease it at $300 a month and not do anything with it. There would have to be an active plan that would be instituted within a year or 18 months, that the proposed uses in the management plan would have to be up and running. If we would lease the property and then sublet it to any other tenants, it would have to be done by a competitive bidding process. The tenants would be subject to approval of the state, and a fair market rent would have to be charged to any tenants that would be there. So, recommendation would be for the board to discuss and weigh its options, whether it wants to proceed in taking a look at an appraisal and seeing what the appraised price might be in order to purchase the property outright, or discuss other options that would be available to it. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or Mr. Klockowicz, I don't know if you have anything to add in.
If I could just throw in a couple of
Yes,
comments. Last summer, you voted to express an interest and proceed with the appraisal. And I think normally we would have just gone down that path and not come back to you until the appraisal was completed. However, midstream in that process, the idea of leasing came up, which at $300 a year seemed very facially attractive. So we started getting into a choice of alternatives situation. And as Bill explained, as we head down the lease process, if we do, we're going to encounter a set of state requirements that we'll have to comply with pretty much from start to finish. So we'll always be kind of monitored and reporting to the state. I think Bill and I have discussed it pretty fully. I think our bottom line recommendation is that you go forward with the appraisal, see what the appraised amount is, because what we're hearing is that they're coming back very low. And then once you get to that point, you can make a choice between either purchase at the low appraised amount or go forward with the lease, low rent, but you're going to have to put up with the state regulations, if you will, during that period of time. We've talked pretty extensively with the state to make sure that you can maintain those two avenues or possibilities for now, and the answer is yes. The state prefers the sale, but from our latest discussion yesterday with, I'm not sure what the guy's title is, but...
It was Scott Woolham. He's the Director of State Lands. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So we talked with him at length yesterday and confirmed that, yes, go ahead, get the appraisal, figure out what the purchase price would be. If you don't like the purchase price, come and talk to us about a lease, and we'll be happy to entertain the lease discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move we go ahead with getting the appraisal.
I'll second that with one caveat, that we see to it that Mr. Boyle gets a copy of that one from North Florida.
I know. Don't worry. He'll be well aware of it.
One question, we still have the third option after the appraisal, just to say, no, we're not interested,
That's
right?
correct.
We're not committing ourselves either to a purchase or lease. We still have the option to just say no and walk away.
That's correct.
Okay.
And this appraisal, what is the cost factor? Is just under $9,000?
Under $9,000.
I have a question on the appraisal. We're using that North Florida example where the asbestos was found. Did they have to quantify it to say there's X amount in place? And if so, just want to make sure the type of appraisal we're getting will include, okay, if he just says asbestos may be present, is that enough for him to write down the value by X hundreds of thousands of dollars? Or does the appraisal need to, the scope of the appraisal need to be written in a fashion so it includes to identify the deficiency or the potential hazard and to quantify the negative value of the potential hazard?
I understand the question. As far as quantify, no, I don't think a survey, or I don't think an appraisal would go that far in depth.
Right.
But the appraisal certainly could say, every room in the dormitory contained popcorn ceilings, which has evidence of asbestos, or shingles with asbestos, or insulation surrounding pipes containing asbestos was found throughout the facility. I think that's the type of language that you would see.
Yeah, and the appraisal is basically going to look at it, and they're going to say, okay, this is what we have, what's the highest and best use? And that's that's what the appraisal is going to come back in theory, or in fact, what the highest and best use is, and it's probably going to be just like they did in North Florida, campus of some kind. Now, and how many of those are wanting to be relocated next to a landfill and those other external factors? So,
which would be
to the point the state will pay us to take it off their hands.
Well, that would be nice.
I don't think that would be.
And on your
we could try.
On the site sketch, which was the shooting training? No, I was looking at the agenda and I couldn't, or on the legend on the left. Number 4.
No.
And it's right there in the northwest.
Yeah, I don't think it's on that.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's out. Go to the. It's at the very northwest corner of the property.
Or I guess maybe go to the aerial and maybe you'll see it on that.
See, right there.
It's outside the loop?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right there in the northwest corner.
I got you. So it's sort of standalone, so you could hypothetically break that little piece out for their training thing and still have whatever's that you might want to keep left down the school side. But we'll see what the appraisal.
We could have the charter school in marksmanship.
Charter school too, and we can satisfy all. We have a motion on the floor in a second, well, I see that there's a few interested parties in the room. Gentlemen, would you all like to reserve your comments for the future date after the appraisal arrives?
I would prefer Mr. Waddell do that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Captain?
Rick Lane on behalf of Sheriff Lohr. The sheriff also is in favor of the idea of the County Commission and the staff pursuing the appraisal of the property before going ahead and making a determination. There are some aspects of lease requirements that certainly Sheriff Lohr would not be in favor of at this point, but would consider endorsing the concept of pursuing the appraisal.
Be careful. Mr. Bear's going to ask the sheriff to pay for half or something.
I think someone said earlier that's at a pay grade higher than mine.
Well put, Captain.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Would you like to comment, Mr. Waddell?
Well, just very short. Gene Waddell, I'm chairman of the Charter High School Board. I like the way you're moving, and we've been in touch with Sheriff Lohr. We feel that we can cohabitate this property and not infringe on each other. So, matter of fact, there was when I was on the school board and we were designing Sebastian River High School, we went around the state looking at high schools to design Sebastian River. And there was a school, and I think, as a matter of fact, I know the school's still there, over in Tampa, that had a shooting range as part of the curriculum. So, yeah.
There you go.
It works.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of the appraisal and supporting an interest to look at whichever way this goes. However, I believe that we might be looking at a great collaborative investment into the county, investment into the future for various sources.
Alan, once the appraisal is done, is there a time limit that we have to be making a decision within?
I don't remember seeing a specific one. I'm sure that state staff will impose some period of time on us.
Okay.
But they've been very flexible, so I'm sure they'll give us a chance to, fully consider it.
So I would just suggest that if the charter school is interested, that you all at least have a sketch of a plan, working on it, so that if the appraisal comes back under the assumption it's cheap enough, we want to go forward, you all would have a plan to present to us that we could incorporate in our thought process whether to move forward or not. And
just to comment a little bit further on that, if you decide not to purchase and you want to go lease, we will have to have a plan.
Right.
All these kind of generalized discussions are going to have to distill down to an actual plan for us to submit on the lease side.
Right. Okay.
Well, let me just say, when you look at the requirements, the state requirements of a lease, they get to be rather onerous.
Yeah.
And if you decide to lease, we'd probably back away. So.
All right. Just maybe y'all could sketch something out under the assumption we buy it.
We will.
What would you all bring to the
quite
table?
frankly, I've yet to get down there to get on the property and look at it. And however, it was designed as a youthful offender, educational type facility. And we think that a lot of the vocational skills that need to be trained in are lacking in the county, and that's why, I mean, it's built just for that. So I don't think there'd be a whole lot of modifications necessary.
And I think that'd be a great use for it. I just think if we have a little time crunch, they need to be ready to move forward with a proposal to us.
Well, now that we know you're moving forward, we'll move forward.
Okay.
And that would include y'all maintaining it. Let's not go down that fight again without us, and we've already done that.
That's not a motion yet.
Mr. Waddell, to reduce your fears, I believe there's a few gentlemen in the room that have been down to that facility to a great extent, and
If somebody has access to it, I'd love to get on there.
Yeah, I'd like to get on it too.
I have been there myself professionally in my prior profession, and I think it's quite suitable. Not knowing all your needs, it's quite suitable for the instructional endeavors and a shop-like environment. And yes, there is a kitchen and a lot of facilities and a laundry that would quite match your concept of education and vocational skill endeavors.
Good.
I'm not willing to hoist anyone over a fence, but I believe we've got a contact person that can get us access out there.
Yeah, we'd like.
I've got my auctioneer's license. We'll get us in.
Yeah, and Commissioner Davis, don't you have a lot of time spent down there?
Yeah, there you go. I got my bolt cutter still.
No, we're not talking about serving any time there. All right, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next item on, thank you, Councilor. Next item on the agenda is the Solid Waste Disposal District.
Move approval of the minutes, November 13, 2012.
Second. Motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Davis. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. The next item is a change order, item number 1, to Mandel's Tractor Service
Move staff recommendation.
Incorporated for the Customer Convenience Center Paving Improvement, bid number 2012047. Motion by Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Davis. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Gentlemen, meeting adjourned.